Okay, now in this segment we're going to talk about our line transfer pickoff. So in this application we have another rope individual who's on a main line, potentially on a main line and a belay line, who has either become injured or incapacitated at mid-height. Meaning we're going to send a subsequent or secondary rescuer over the edge. This rescuer is going to access that victim. He's going to have to transfer their load in the process of picking them off from their already tensioned and existing system onto his system. So this has a few more steps to procuring that victim and rescuing them. We're also going to use the moving brake application in this segment so that you can see the variables in rigging and in manipulation of the victim between fixed brake and moving brake. So here with the moving brake, we've got the end of the rope tied off to a fixed anchor point. Scott has rigged that main line into his descent control device, which in this application is a brake bar rack. We've bought his belay line in. We've put that midline knot on the appropriate rigging component of his harness. Now, there's a little bit of cross rigging here, which makes it important for you to look at your lines, how they're going to lay and how you're going to deploy them. So Scott knows that his victim is on the left side of his body in orientation to his descent line. So he's taking the tail of his belay and he's going to take the tail of his pickoff strap and configure both of those to the accessory loops on the left side of his harness. He's then going to take the U of his pickoff strap. He's going to bring that around to his brake bar rack. He's going to clip that in to the eye of the rack, ensuring that he's not loading that pickoff strap onto any component of his harness. Some rescuers will also elect to use a screw link for this application, just for a little further margin of safety, redundancy, and variability in case it gets gate loaded. So ensure, because this is a component that's not under tension, that when you go to tension it up, that you take the time to analyze this piece of hardware, ensure that it's not side loaded, as well as that it's not gate loaded, and then also ensure that your gate is still in a locked position. So Scott's got all of his pre-rigging components in place. He's now going to control his own position on rope utilizing his descent control device. He's going to make his way down and access the victim. Okay, so we can see here that Scott has stopped with his feet at about the height of the victim's waist. As soon as he's a little bit higher than the victim, feet at the victim's waist, he's going to go ahead and do a lock-off tie-off on his brake rack. Once his lock-off tie-off is completed and cinched down, and he gives it a little tension test to make sure that it's not going to slip out, he's going to go ahead and traverse across the wall and get married up with the victim's lines. As soon as he gets that victim's line, we can see, looking at this application, that if Scott tried to hold on to those lines with just his arm or hand, he would very quickly become overly fatigued and be incapable of completing all the pickoff components. So Scott's immediately going to grab those ropes, he's going to get inverted, and he's going to utilize his legs wrapping around the front side of those lines to marry up with her rope system. Now he can freely let his right hand off of his brake rack, let his left hand off of her ropes, and utilize both hands to quickly make the right connection points. Scott's going to start with the end of the belay. So he's going to take that pre-configured tip of the belay, go ahead and tie it into the victim's rigging component on their harness. He is then going to disconnect the victim's belay if they have one. As soon as he disconnects the victim's belay, it is now out of the equation and the victim is now on, in a slack aspect, the primary or rescuer's belay. His next connection point is going to be the pickoff strap. He's going to disconnect his pickoff strap, let it hang so it gets clean, straight, and neat. Then he's going to take the V component or V bracket on the pickoff strap and connect that to the victim's harness. As soon as that component is connected, he's going to pull out all of the slack in the pickoff strap. He can utilize both hands to pull that victim as close to his rack component as possible. As he tensions that system up, he's going to give one quick check on his hardware to ensure that nothing is gate loaded and that everything is locked. Once he has ensured that he safely captured the victim's load, he's now going to access the victim's brake rack or descent control device. Whatever that device is, he's going to go ahead and activate their friction control, and he is going to allow the victim, using good control techniques on the brake bar rack with his hands, to manipulate that piece of hardware or that piece of descent control device as he lowers the victim, thus transferring their load from their main line onto the pickoff strap. So he can take his right hand, he can put his right hand down on the lower bars and spread those bars out as needed, or take out one of the bottom bars to give freer movement of that main line. Once that load is starting to transfer, he can then get right side up and fully play out the rest of that descent control device and remove it from the equation. As soon as the victim is completely unrigged from all of their hardware elements, he is then going to get back on his own brake bar rack, undo his lock-off tie-off, and descend down to ground with his victim.